Hi, Gene Burnett from GeneBurnett.com. Hey, I thought we'd talk a little bit today about form and function. We have a lot of form in Tai Chi. In fact, our movements are called, our main training is called forms, right? So you do a form, the form has a beginning, the form has several movements, the form has a closing, and then you're done with the form. And I think it's important to have a good structural and form understanding of the movements, because it's really helpful to know what the posture is or what the arriving stance is at the end of a movement. So you work on what it is. And what it is a certain relationship, a certain type of alignment, a certain amount of relaxation, a certain amount of firmness, and a certain overall integrative, whole finished feeling. But there's also another aspect of this stuff, which is not just what it is, but what does it do? What's the function of the movement? Why are you doing this movement? Now, your function can be a very qigong, very kind of general health kind of a function. So that, the function of the movement can just be to smooth out your movements and relax into this next shape with a kind of a nice balanced feeling. That's fine. If you want to look at the martial function, the physical function of the movement, I think your movements will go a little more deep. And it's important, if you're studying this as either a martial art or a daily life art, a way to protect yourself martially, but also just in daily life, the physics of everyday life, dealing with unexpected situations and people and distracted people and momentum and objects and things moving around in your life, and you don't want to hurt yourself or anything else. And gravity, dealing with gravity, which is pressing on us all the time. If you want your movements in Tai Chi to have a really direct connection to that, to the daily life world and to the martial, the fighting world, I think it's important to have a functional understanding of the movements as well as a structural one. Because the structural one won't just give you a functional one. Just because you do forms really well or do them perfectly, it doesn't unlock some mystical power. It doesn't unlock abilities to defend yourself. It doesn't create a person who can defend himself or herself or their self. It doesn't create that. It just creates a person who's really good at forms. If you understand functionally what you're doing in the movements as well as structurally, then yes, you start to understand how to use this basic idea. So for instance, let's just take a really simple movement like a, brush, knee, and push. You're doing this is my version of it, there's a million of them. If you understand the function of this movement, which is to take one motion, one weight shift forward, and with a turn of the waist, you could be deflecting something with the front hand, pushing something away with the front hand, and pushing with the other. Some people use this as a block to a kick. I don't know if that's just a fantasy, because it's not good. Blocking kicks with your hands is not a good idea. Not only do you hurt yourself, but you leave that whole side open. It's better to deal with kicks with your legs. But I think, you can think of it like a punch is coming here. I'm deflecting or making some contact with it, some downward pressure on it, and I'm moving it away as I come up with my push. So structurally, my structural understanding though is just that I arrive in this position, that my spine is upright here, my shoulders are down, my knee is aligned, I'm sinking into my hips, I'm forming this ball shape here, I'm shifting my weight forward, and before it goes too far forward, I'm going to settle, and I'm going to allow my waist to bring that push into a more circular rotation there, and I'm going to end up in this position. So structurally, there's a certain number of little points going on that arrive you in this position. Functionally, right? If your attitude is functional, there's a million correct brush, knee, and push. You can do it really small, like this, like that, or you can do it medium size like this, or you can do it huge like this. And they're all brush, knee, and push, because you understand that functional understanding of it. You have enough functional understanding of the movement. If it's a structural understanding, you'll tend to think this is brush knee and nothing else is. Brush knee is exactly the way it's supposed to be in your particular style or form. It's kind of a straitjacket though, because unless something happens in your daily life or in some kind of a martial situation that's exactly like that, the punch is exactly in the right place, or the kick is exactly in the right place, and you come exactly into the right spot, then you're out of luck. There's a lot of people working to try to make these techniques work, and if you're trying to make the structural understanding work, you're going to be at a real deficit compared to the functional understanding of how it works. Because if you understand the functional aspect of it, then these particulars they're all about context. They're all about what's happening in the moment. Is the guy really tall? Is it really short? Or is it a small close-in movement? Or do you have to cover some ground? Like all these different variables that the street world outside the temple is unpredictable, and the context is crazy. The world is nuts and unpredictable and doesn't do exactly what you want it to do, as opposed to the temple where you control the context and things are fairly regular and fairly predictable and fairly safe. That's why it's a temple. So the temple's great. It's great to push all that complexity aside for a while and complications and just have a simple space to do your simple thing so you can learn it. But then it's got to go out into that world. Or it should, I think, go out into that world. Otherwise, it's just a nice little isolated experience or isolated room full of people having experiences. But what about function? What about the world? So when you apply it to function, oh man, then the general shape is important, but the specific application of it, it's going to be different every single time you do it. Many times I've used things that I've learned from all my Tai Chi study and forms and stuff, but the thing that I've done that used all the attributes and things that I learned from Tai Chi had no resemblance to any movement in the form. I'm not preparing myself to have something happen that requires a Tai Chi form movement to deal with it, because it's very rarely, if ever, going to happen. So one thing that's really nice to do is to pressure test your form with function. Like, you understand the structure of it, but now do you understand not just what it is, but what it does? So pressure test it in a sense by seeing if it works under varying situations. Can you adapt the structure to different situations and function? And likewise, if you're able to do something functionally, you can pressure test that by looking at your form while you do that. There's a lot of people who are really good fighters and movers who are very talented, and all they pretty much do is have everything they do is a functional understanding. Like they don't put a lot of attention on form because their functional understanding is good and it serves them well. The problem is, over time, slight deviations in form as they go about doing their thing can cause injuries that are entirely preventable if that person also had something that they do that's very form-oriented. Some styles pride themselves, no forms. All we have is like a basic neutral stance, and then we do our techniques that just defend ourselves. And that's great. It's great for defense if you've got a good teacher and a good system. But you will hurt yourself over time if you don't also study your form, because life and movement and application and function, all that stuff happens too fast for you to study your form. It just happens too quickly. Just as if you do nothing but forms, all the forms and stuff are too safe and they happen too slowly to train you to break it apart and to be fluent and flowing and in the moment with the function. So if you allow your sort of pendulum of attention or pendulum of practice to go back and forth between form and function, pressure test your form. Does it function? Pressure test your function. Does it also have good form? So you can study your movements when you do things quickly and effectively, and then say, wait a minute, what's going on with the form in there? I really think all martial artists who are really into serious, combat and fighting and stuff should do regular yoga or regular Tai Chi, regular slow alignment work, because the micro misalignments that you have when you start really working fast, they take a while to catch up with you, but they will. A lot of older guys who were good fighters are hobbled with injuries now because they went for function. They just got the job done, but they didn't pay enough attention to form. And there's plenty of form people who have beautiful shapes and postures and stuff, but they're not able to break out of that and just manifest a movement that serves the needs of the moment in the moment and has that function. So I think it's a great practice theme, a great practice principle to keep in mind. Balance your form and structure. Have form and structure, your structure and form with more flow and more function. Function and structure are like two opposite poles, and of course in Tai Chi, we want to try to blend them together into a perfect blend of form and function. But realistically, that means putting more attention on form sometimes and more attention on function sometimes, and letting the structure and the form speak to each other, educate each other, pressure test each other, and help balance each other into an ongoing sort of work in progress. Because of course your body's changing and the world's changing, and you want to kind of keep this up. It isn't something you just attain and forget about. You want to keep on working on it. Some people just get to a certain level of ability or a certain level of function, and that's it. They don't study form anymore, and they get, they can function, but they tend to get overweight, and they tend to have joint problems, and they tend to have stuff going on because they're not attending to the form as they go. So don't forget your form, but don't forget your function. Don't forget your structure, don't forget your function. They can speak to each other and nourish each other. So thanks for watching. I appreciate it. I make these videos to be helpful. If they're helpful to you, always let me know. It's always nice to hear that things are helpful. And I have a tip jar here on my YouTube channel, but also at my website, geneburnett.com. But that's strictly optional and much appreciated. The main thing I do this for is just to help out and to try to be useful, sharing things that are useful for me. So be well and best of luck in your practice. Take good care of yourself, because just 'cause.